The Menscape
The
Podcast.
Menscape
Carl.J.
Podcast with Carl.J.
The Menscape Podcast.
Ashley.
Carl.J. Ashley.
Hi everyone, welcome to the June 2025 Menscape Podcast. This time we're sponsored by the Bioenergy School of Ireland, and our guest is the one and only Yvonne Skelly. How are you doing, Yvonne?
I am doing incredibly well and delighted to be invited along to your podcast.
Fantastic. Without any further ado, won't you tell us who are you and what do you do?
I love that question. I mean, sometimes I kind of mess, and I think I might have said it to you the first time we spoke, is I'm infinite consciousness, having a human experience, like we all are. But if you want to drill it down into the
No,
3D
no, that's enough.
experience,
Next question.
if we want to drill it down into, my human form, my human expression, I'm Yvonne, and I'm originally from Dublin, currently residing in the beautiful West Wicklow, which has captured my heart. I moved here in 2021 and I adore
hmm
the energy and the landscape here.
Yeah.
I am what people might consider a wellness entrepreneur. So I have been in the business of wellness, so to speak. And I say that kind of very lightly because on one level it is a business, but really it's a sole purpose, it's a calling, it's a vocation. So I set it up really to be in service to people. But I set the business up in 2014,
Uh-huh.
really inspired by my desire to make a positive difference in the world and to support people in the midst of this grand awakening that we are currently experiencing.
Cool.
And also my background, from very late teens, well, probably since, I entered planet Earth, but from my late teens, certainly, I had a real curiosity about the world and always felt that there was much more to this existence than perhaps we were led to believe within the mainstream, within the limitations of what we were educated in or in general societal norms. So I had that kind of curiosity about me, and
hmm
I started to explore things like the power of our mind, our heart consciousness, the innate ability we have to create. And that led me down many a rabbit hole from all sorts of things in terms of the nature of reality, the nature of society, questioning a lot of things going on in the world,
Yeah.
looking for alternative views, and also exploring, I suppose, my own self-mastery, um, and looking at my own healing and my own limitations and how that was expressed in my life and how I could maybe start to deprogram myself from any perceived limitations. And I say perceived because we are already whole, in and of ourselves. It's
Right.
the limitations that we impose upon ourselves through our experience that really cause some of the issues that we're experiencing on our planet. So from that exploration and all the different studies that I've done in different modalities, that led me in 2014 to through a kind of a series of very magical synchronicities. I opened a centre in Naas, County Kildare, and then within a couple of years, I had another centre, and then I had three centres, three wellness centres, and 80
One wasn't enough,
therapists.
no?
One wasn't enough. But
Right.
it's kind of, and I'd love to speak to this more because it's kind of just following your heart and holding the vision to help people and then just seeing what kind of magnetizes into your life. So I found myself at two centers within 2 years. So 2016 at two centers, we had 80 therapists working,
Wow.
coming through that
That's a
center.
lot
And
to manage, yeah.
it's a lot. And then we also, and by the way, I was still working part-time. Like my background is in project management. So I worked with a education charity for about 14, 15 years, parallel to
So it's
building
more
this
corporate
wellness
sector.
company, which was kind of fairly intense. And then in 2021, I got another center again, just allowing the flow of the universe. And now in 2025, I have zero centers. So there's a lot of stories in between all of that. But again, it's just following the flow and just surrendering to the universe. And my affirmation always is, how may I be of service? Where does the universe want me to go now? How in this great mystery of life can I just get out of my own way and allow the magic of the universe to bring to me what is needed to be of service to people?
Yeah.
So I currently have no centre. Still doing wellness though, and doing events and retreats and corporate wellness and schools wellness, and in the middle at the moment of a multi-million euro centre in the making. So that's going to hopefully open in autumn this year,
And off the
and
back
that's
of
a beautiful story
already
about how that
already
unfolds.
having had three of them,
Yeah.
so you know what you're doing this time.
Hopefully, yeah.
Ah,
I'm kind of, I laugh, I mean, you have to have a sense of humor in this life, because in 2022 I was twice nominated in two different categories as Kildare Businesswoman of the Year. And by 2023, I had no centres. I was kind of going, wow, that worked out well. So I really had to lean into dropping the identity of this entrepreneur of three
yeah,
wellness centres. And
yeah.
I think it was all part of my journey to completely let go and surrender and be in a position where I literally had nothing. Like I had no centres. The house I was living in, I was going to get evicted from. So I was going to soon have no home. And I just surrendered to the universe and said, right, what do I do here? And I followed my heart and decided to go nomadic. And no centres, go nomadic, a lot of loss of income. So financially, not in great stead. And I just was right, I'm going to step into this and see what unfolds. And that was back last summer. And it's just been an incredible year. And I know you're all about writing and getting people to tell their stories. And it's definitely a story that I feel I should be sharing with people.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I don't spend as much time trying to persuade people to write. It's more, again, coming back to the idea of service and helping and serving and facilitating people that know they've got a need to share or to write their own books, but they don't know where to start, or they think being an author is a highfalutin thing. And really, it's just about breaking it down into an everyday practice of spending 10 or 15 minutes writing here, writing there. People think you need to clear the decks and create a load of headspace to write a book, and it's not really that way at all. The practical reality of it is 10, 15 minutes when you first wake up, 10,
Mm,
15 minutes when you go into bed at night, or in between, if you can create a peaceful environment where you can sit with whatever's coming up, and
mm,
then either just getting a pen and paper and flowing, or getting your laptop out and typing stuff up. And once you're in the habit of doing that, the book writes itself.
yeah, that's beautiful. And I love to write. And it's funny you mentioned that because in January I started the journey of the Artist Way. You might have heard of that, have you?
Julia Cameron.
The Artist Way. It's like a 12-week program, and part of that remit is you have to write 3 pages of free flow every day. And it's just literally just dumping whatever's in your mind. There's no strategy to it. You have to write this, this, and this. You just literally just sit in front of the pages and write 3 pages. And I did that for pretty much up until about a month ago.
Oh, okay.
And I just found it actually incredible because some of the insights that were coming in, and because there was no pressure to write anything specific, it was very much just allowing whatever's on your mind to be on the page. And I
So
was only
when's the
musing the
book?
other day, so I need to get back to that. I need to get
Yeah.
back to writing those 3 pages again and starting to, bring in those insights. And the idea is, I mean, there's a little bit more to the artist way, but that's a fundamental pillar of it, is writing 3 pages every day. And I need to get back to that because it does unlock a certain creative flow within you and a reflective time in your day.
Is it Julia Cameron or Rona Cameron or something like that? One of my clients was sharing with me a bit about the artist's way before. It looks fascinating.
Yeah, it is a fascinating journey, and there's loads of other things that you can do in it, but I definitely would recommend it to anyone that's looking to write, or just even just learn a little bit more about themselves.
Yeah, it's a good job you don't know any, right? Coaches or anyone that helps people right
Well, you're
now.
here, right, coach? Yeah, and I'm sure you can give people loads more insight into do that. Yeah.
Well, it's nice. It's nice to have the serendipitous experience of knowing that what you need will just arrive at the right time as
Mm,
and when you need it.
mm,
And part of this, I don't know where I read it or where I first read it, but I read something a few years ago about how it was possible to manifest any time that I needed a parking space. Somebody would leave one just around the place that I needed to find one.
yeah.
And I thank God or the universe or whatever in advance, and it never fails to happen, and it never fails to impress me when it does happen.
Mm,
And it's almost like it's nothing to do with me, actually. I'm just, in this state of flow and receiving and gratitude. And yeah.
yeah. And I think that's, from my own experience, because it's about magnetizing that experience. And this is what perhaps a lot of humanity has forgotten is that we are the creators of our experience, and that is the power within us to do that. And when we start to recognize that and have, a frequency of gratitude, a frequency of understanding that we are abundant as a birthright, this is who we are as a divine being. You start to magnetize in experiences that are more aligned with what your vision is within your heart, and that can include parking. I've done that one myself a few times, yeah, which is great
Yeah,
on a
it
very practical
sounds.
level.
Yeah, what you're saying very much sounds like the first chapter in my latest
Is.
book there, The Power of the Written Word, right? Where
Mm,
I'm reinforcing this notion that we're divine beings in the form of a human incarnation as a man or a woman with these incredible powers or capacities of creating the reality of our heart's desire.
mm,
So the logical conclusion from that is what we're not changing, we're choosing.
yeah.
And if we're dissatisfied, or if you can imagine, right, I'm from Manchester, northwest of England, everybody just grew up watching Coronation Street. And then it
Mm.
turned into a religion. You're just listening to people fucking moan for half an hour on the television. Oh, the bloody weather's terrible, isn't it, love? Yeah, what we're gonna do? Oh, we'll just watch telly. So people, it's almost like an institutional league of moaners.
Yeah.
And the more, what you don't realize is subconsciously, the more you moan or complain, the more the universe gives you to moan and complain about.
Yeah.
So the gratitude,
Absolutely.
the more you have to be grateful for, the more you have to be grateful for. And
Yeah.
that literally just starts with the breath, because one day you'll take your last breath and there won't be any. And so gratitude for the breath is probably the most fundamental meditation we can realize.
Yeah. And I think also, one of my life passions is helping people to understand that their point of perception very much dictates their experience. And to give you an example, because I like to give very practical examples rather than some kind of highfalutin concept or theory. So when I had three centres at one point, and my final centre I had left, and long story short, I got a very short eviction notice, a 30-day eviction notice, which was part of a bigger story in the areas where they were mass evicting a lot of people, which
Mhm.
I'm not even going to go into all of the backstory because that's a whole other podcast, the story behind that. But effectively, the principle of it was I was 30 days notice to leave my building, effectively close my business, and which was a big shock, because I'd lost two other centres,
So you
through
could have
various
got
different
angry, you could have
situations.
got
I
upset,
could
you
have got
could have
angry, I
got,
could have got
yeah.
upset. And what I did is I've kind of tried to embody and practice what I try to inspire other people to do. And I remember, obviously feeling the feelings, and sorry, my dog is crying here. Hang on a second. So I was in a situation where I found myself being evicted with 30 days notice. And I knew at that point that I had a choice and I think collectively, we're all at choice points about how we choose to respond to certain situations globally. And I had a choice point where I could choose to be the victim and feel very sorry for myself because there was a certain level of injustice about what happened.
Yeah.
And I knew that, but I also knew that it was up to me about how I respond to it. So I said to myself, right, I fundamentally believe that the universe is there to support us. It conspires to help support us. And I always hold the vision in my heart that I'm in service to humanity, that my business is there to support people in realizing their full potential. So I held that vision in my heart and I said, right, I can choose to be feeling sorry for myself, get angry, and, allow some of those feelings to process through me because it's not about spiritually bypassing your human experience. So I allowed some of those feelings to move through me. But I focused more of my heart energy, my life force energy on saying, when something falls away, there's a vacuum created, quantum physics, there's an opportunity there for another energy to come in.
Right.
And I said, I am going to get excited and curious about what else is going to come in and what magic can unfold now that this center is gone. And I started to kind of create that sense of excitement about it and start to vision and feel how that might be and what opportunities might present itself. And since that's happened, I have had such an amazing year. I've said held that vision all the time to be in service to people. One of the things I did, and people constantly remind, when you believe in beauty of humanity and gratitude for all that's around us and the beautiful souls that are in this world, you start to see that. So I actually got a phone call from a lady when she heard about the centre, because there was quite a bit of a pushback about it, and a lot of people contacted me about it. And she is a lady who I knew on Facebook but never knew personally.
Hmm.
And she contacted me and said, "Do you know, Yvonne?" She goes, "You might think I'm a bit mad contacting you because you don't really know me." She says, "But I've been watching what you do and, all the beautiful events that Lakeshore have done. And I really feel that you should celebrate everything that you've achieved before your centre closes." And she goes, "And I would like," and she's quite a well-known singer, by the way. And
Yeah.
she goes, "I would love to volunteer my time to come down and to sing for you as part of that celebration." And I remember just kind of almost crying. Not almost, I think I did cry about how beautiful that, a soul that I don't really know apart from through Facebook is calling me to say she wants to sing and, suggesting that I celebrate. So that inspired me then to create a love celebration. And I knew in my heart that if we came together to celebrate all the beauty that was created at Lakeshore, and if we bring people together in heart coherence, and we celebrate and we sing and we rejoice and we bring joy, I knew that that would create a pulse wave into the ether, into the universe, to start to magnetize new experiences that would be more in alignment and bring Lakeshore's journey onto the next level to help more people. So we did that as part of the closing ceremony for the centre. And it was really, really beautiful. And since then, the year has been just incredible. Like so many opportunities. I ended up traveling to America 4 times. I was in Canada, around Europe. I decided to go nomadic, which was a complete like jump off the cliff and hope that I'd get wings on the way down. I remember my kids, I've grown up kids, and they were like, "Mom, what are you doing? Like you're giving up your rental property," which I was going to get evicted from anyway, by the way. It was only a matter of time.
Yeah.
And I just said, "You know what? I'm going to leave on my terms." And I really feel in my heart that going nomadic is the right thing to do. What's the worst that can happen? And I traveled around and I met some incredible people, and I had loads of offers of people, you can stay here, you can stay there. One of the beauties of the company is that I cultivated over the years is that there was a lot of international people that I used to bring to Ireland. So I had loads of offers to stay in different locations around the world, and I just followed that. And I ended up then house sitting back. I traveled all during the summer,
Hmm.
continuing to run my business and doing different events and stuff abroad and in Ireland. And then I ended up house sitting back in West Wicklow for a dear friend of mine and running an Airbnb and staying in the area and just allowing things to flow. And it was just beautiful. And in January then this year, oh, and by the way, always maintaining and holding the vision in my heart that the company I created in 2014 is there to be in service to people. Because what we are witnessing around the globe, because traveling around, same things are happening to people just in different cultures and different geographical locations, but people are starting to crack open. People are starting to question the world around them and starting to realize maybe this life that I'm living is not really the life that I'm meant to be living. And they're starting to look at their friends and their jobs and their relationships and where they're at going, there has to be more to the world than this, you know. And when that happens, it can be deeply uncomfortable for people. So part of what we're trying to do is to hold that anchor point for people to do that in a way that they feel held and they can, you know, explore their own self-mastery. Um, but I ended up in January anyway, I was over in California and I got a phone call from a lady who had been to some of our events and found them very transformative. And she just said to me, you know, you guys don't have a physical place to operate from anymore, but I would really love to finance buying a place for you guys to work from and building a beautiful wellness residential retreat space somewhere in West Wicklow because it's such a beautiful location and use that as a basis and a kind of an anchor point for you and your team and your tribe of people to help people. And literally, we are in the process. We have sale agreed on a house overlooking the lakes and the mountains in West Wicklow. And that's going to come on stream by autumn, I'd say. And I get to live on site as a custodian of it. So, you know, going nomadic
Days.
and jumping off that cliff actually, you know, has allowed me to be open to receive something that I never even imagined possible. And so this is what we're being called to do, is to completely surrender, to open our
Yeah.
heart, to start to hold vision in our hearts of what it is we want, and allowing the universe to bring it to you, magnetize it to you.
I think because of the impacts of organized religion and through the Buddhist center that aside from being a cosmic mystic psychic, I'm a lay Buddhist as well. And I come across people that describe themselves as recovering Catholics because of the impacts of organized religion in this sense. A lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater and reject spirituality. But it seems pretty obvious to me that we're human beings, or should we say, spiritual beings having a human experience. And if people can do what you've done, what you've described there embodies courage as well as surrender. And it's a process and it's a trusting. And it's a trusting that, if you want to call it God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, the great Tiddlywinks master on the back of the turtle, where, you know, it's like, don't matter what you call it, does it?
No, I think you just have to be open to receive the beauty within you.
There's something going on anyway. There's plenty enough evidence to suggest that we're in a holographic universe or some kind of matrix, and we can go down that rabbit hole later. But one thing is for sure, you've embodied the courage and the trust and the surrender, and now you're seeing the consequences of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
At all
But
my
it
book
does.
launches, I used to tell it the story. It was
Yeah,
like a Chinese farmer story, and I'm sure it just used to bore people, so I stopped bothering with it. But I've started doing a few book launches recently. I'm going to be in West Wicklow later on this month, actually. Looking forward to doing a book launch with Brian at his shop in Blessington there, and hopefully we'll have yourself along as well as a couple of other
yeah,
amazing guest speakers. And one of the things that the book launches, I like to use them as a platform for local people to share what they're doing in the work or area of mental health services for people. And the story of the Chinese farmer basically evolved along the lines of, in its simplest terms, this guy was living in a rural Chinese village and he had a horse, and everyone said, "Oh, this is fantastic." But one day the horse ran away, and everyone said, "Oh no, this is terrible. This is a shame." And he said, "Well, we'll see." And about a week later, the horse came back with four other horses. So this was like winning the lotto, and everyone said, "This is fantastic. This is amazing." And again, he said, "Well, we'll see." About a week later, his son was trying to break in one of the horses and got kicked and shattered his leg and broke his leg in three or four places. And as you probably guessed, everyone went, "This is terrible. This is a disaster," right? And the man said, "Well, we'll see." And then 3 weeks later, the Chinese army came into town, basically conscripting every able-bodied young man. And the fact that the son had broken his leg meant that they weren't going to take him into the army. So it was actually a blessing. And every time we get an extra layer of perception or a wider, broader perspective, what may at first appear to be a disaster can well be a blessing, and vice versa.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned over the last number of years, because there's many different kind of peaks and troughs that I've experienced personally and in business. And to be honest, I kind of see business as very much an extension of me as a person, an embodiment of what I'm about as a person and how I want to move in the world. And what I've learned through all the different things that have happened is exactly what you've communicated in that story,
Thank you.
is to just accept what's happening and understand that there's a greater unfolding happening and to not get caught up in the drama of it,
But you
to
can
just try and stay
understand,
peaceful and balanced in your heart.
you can see why people forget that though, or you can see how people can contract into the fear. Oh, I've got a mortgage to pay. Oh, I've got to put kids through university. Oh, I've got to pay for my holiday. There's few things that can often, yeah, reduce you back into that sense of fear instead of love. But if you're just embodying love, if you love what you do and you love yourself and you love your life and you've got the courage to trust and surrender, everything will fall into place.
Yeah. And it certainly has. What I will say is like I've definitely experienced, your mention about how will I pay the rent or the mortgage or how do I've experienced all that. I've had many a night where I'm in my head, in my mental thoughts going, how am I going to sustain myself here? Oh my God, this is happening. But it's learning to acknowledge them, but realize that you have much greater power within you, which is that love and that creative energy, and to not give so much of your mental focus on that kind of limiting thoughts and start to really drop into your heart. And that's where you can get the courage, and that's where you can start to see the beauty in everything and be in that very balanced state that that farmer was being, where he's just observing everything, being the witness of everything rather than getting pulled into the kind of drama around what's happening. And there's a lot of drama in the world at the moment. And there's a lot of things that can pull people's energy to and from and back and
Yeah.
forth and in and out and around the houses. And if we can learn to really center ourselves and witness some of the fears that are coming up, but not allow those fears to prevent us from moving forward, to prevent us from seeing that greater vision in our heart. Because the only way we change the world is by our own self-mastery and by
Yeah.
understanding that we are
Yeah.
the creators. So, but that's not to say I don't experience all that. Of course I do. I'm very human. I'm very human.
So before
But
before we move on to a couple of questions, I'll keep an eye out in the post for my invite to your wellness center launch celebration
absolutely.
party. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. We
that
will. We'll
sounds
do a
amazing.
celebration. We will do a celebration. And, for me, life is, I'm kind of dropping the programs of learning through pain and suffering. That's an old program that I don't think we need to do anymore. So I'm all about learning through joy and ease and grace and trusting all the time. So even if there's a roadblock or some challenge that comes up, I'm just going, do you know what? I'm learning this through ease and grace. So
Yeah.
you'll definitely get an invite to the celebration because we're about sharing joy.
And will you get the singer back that came to sing?
I'd love to. I'd love to because she's such an amazing
Yeah.
soul. And we have stayed in touch, actually. We have stayed in touch.
How
So
cool would it be to get her to come and sing at the opening of the new place?
yeah, who would it be? Do you want her name?
No, I'm just saying, how cool would it
Oh,
be?
how cool would it be? I said, who
Yeah.
would it be? Yeah, no, of course, yeah, it would be amazing. And actually, I would love her to come because it'd be very symbolic of a real moment of beauty that she brought, in a time that was quite challenging. So it would be actually very nice to have her at the opening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ever since I crashed my car into a ditch in the summer of 2017, my life has taken a quite a say interesting turn, we'll say, away from the hungry ghost stuff of, lower vibrational energy patterns and behavior. And now I spend most of my time buying chocolate or collecting crystals. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but it just, one of the changes. Dee was telling me that you bought a crystal from us when we had a business called Stoneaholic, beautiful Labradorite piece.
I did actually. I do remember
Yeah.
that was was that during lockdown maybe? Or
Yeah.
before lockdown?
Someone hacked our website and she'd done it all manually, and so we had to let it go. But we were buying beautiful
Yeah,
crystals in from Russia and China and India and stuff, and just following again our own passion
yeah,
for the amazing sort of pieces. And I still have crystals. I take them. I do the psychic and holistic fairs around the country. Take a stand for Right Coach Island, and I bring some of my crystal babies along for the ride. They love it. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. I love crystals, and I do remember it's a beautiful pendant to have a labradorite. Yeah, I do remember buying that. You've just reminded me of that. Yeah, that's amazing. It's funny how, our energies weave and orbit around each other, you
I mean,
know?
you talk about soul family and stuff like that, and it's like people, they might not have met one another or known one another before, but just like you can easily click into a kind of a sense of remembering almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, um, what's your favorite smell?
My favorite smell. Wow. Um, something natural, something like rose or ylang ylang or something like that, a nice essential oil.
Uh-huh.
Be my favorite smell, I think. Yeah.
Very good. What has been the hardest lesson you've ever had to learn?
Self-love
Or unlearning lack of self-love?
or unlearning lack of self-love. Yeah. Yeah.
Me
That's
too.
my journey has been very much about learning to love myself and honor myself. And that's a good old chestnut now, you know. That's an ongoing one. That's an ongoing one, you know. But that has been the toughest lesson because it's brought me into very dark places, not loving myself, you
Yeah.
know.
I think it's very much stems from our childhood growing up in Manchester. My parents, thankfully, weren't evil or abusive people. They loved each other, but they were still carrying maybe two suitcases of their own baggage from their own childhood and stuff. And whatever way it happened, we were taught things like, it doesn't rain, it pours, shit runs down, and who do you think you are? And you just grow up feeling anonymous almost. Well, no, I did. I didn't feel seen or heard or validated or valued, and I would never amount to much, and anything I said didn't really matter. And that was just accepted as part of normal life, not just amongst me, but the people I knew as well. And then all of a sudden you get to a point and you're like, hang on a minute, I didn't agree to any of this.
Mm.
I'm actually an amazing, beautiful, divine being, and I deserve to be seen, and I deserve to be heard, and I deserve to be loved.
Yeah. And I
And
think
unlearning
that's,
that lack of self-love is an amazing thing to do for yourself.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the journey that collectively humanity are on. Because if they realized how amazing they are and the potential they have to create in this world, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now, you know?
Well, it ties in again, I think, to fearlessness and embracing and embodying love.
Yeah.
And once there's an absence of fear, so what if you're gonna die? So what if you're gonna be born? Just yeah. And embracing that sense of not carelessness, but whatever will be, will be. Trust the
Yeah.
plan.
Acceptance. Acceptance.
Yeah. Have you ever jumped out of a plane?
No, I never will. No, no, no. I don't even like going in lifts, like so. Jumping out of a plane now, that'd be a bit too much outside my comfort zone, I think.
Have you ever ridden a horse?
I have ridden a horse, yeah, a few times. Not very well, but I have done it, yeah.
Driven a Ferrari?
Nope, no Ferraris.
Have you ever eaten an insect? I've lost your volume for some
I've never eaten an insect. No.
reason. Um, Have you ever walked on hot coals?
No, I've never done that.
Have you ever done any public speaking? I'd say you probably have.
Many times, many times. Yeah,
One of people's greatest fears is public speaking.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that a lot. Yeah.
You mentioned kids. Have you had children?
I have two children. I was a very young mum, so I have a 28-year-old daughter. I have a 24-year-old son, and I have two grandchildren. So
Wow.
yeah, so I have an 8-year-old grandson and a 4-month-old grandson.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Have you ever written a book?
I've written a chapter in a book,
Cool.
but not a full book, but I would love to write a full book. Yeah.
Well, you've made a start.
Yeah, I've
And
made a
natural
start.
progression from the chapter is another one,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
another one.
And then another one. Yeah. So it's something that I would love to do. It's on my bucket list. Yeah.
So, talking of books, what are your favorite books and why? Are there any books that you'd recommend? I love this section of the podcast because I learn about amazing books I never heard of before. Is there any
Yeah.
books that you'd recommend to people, or any books that have changed your life, or any books that you know about that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah. I mean, I love reading. There's a book I'm reading at the moment, The Gene Keys. I don't know if you know that. I can't even remember the name of the author, Richard something.
Yeah.
So it's very much about our kind of gene keys and the coding within our DNA. And that's really fascinating. It's described as a living transmission, and you can kind of do a little entry into a website and it gives you back what your key gene keys are, and then a profiling and a deeper understanding to what your purpose is here. So that's definitely a good book. And I've another book I've read, which is the grandmother Anna of Jesus. Is that how you, yeah, grandmother Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, and that's a really good book as well. So. Just bear with me while I do with my dog for a second. She's pacing up and down trying to go out, so we'll let her.
No problem.
So grandmother, Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, that's definitely a book. It's about a lady, I think it's Carol Hartsong is the author. Have you
Okay.
heard of the book?
No, but I've come across the idea that the church basically made up about the virgin birth and that the man Jesus the Christ had a wife and had children and there was a bloodline
Yeah,
and that there's a conspiracy around hiding the true knowledge about that from people.
yeah. And this book would be speaking to that, I suppose,
Thank you.
in some aspect. But it's basically it talks about the community and the way of life with the Essenes, and it's a very fascinating book and something that almost kind of ignited soul memories within me. You know, because the
Sure.
Essenes, some of them lived till 600 years old, which might seem quite impossible in our current level of consciousness or awareness or lifestyle, but it felt like a truth to me.
Yeah.
So I really found that book very fascinating, and it's not really the typical narrative of the Catholic version of Yeshua's life or Mary Magdalene, you know. So I really enjoyed that book, and it's definitely one to read. Again,
Were
I
they,
find some books can be like activations. It's like they trigger
hmm,
memories within your soul.
was there a geographical location for the Essenes? Because I've come across them in something I was reading recently as well.
Yeah, I think that they were all over, like obviously around Egypt and Israel, and but they also traveled, I think, to the south of France and Italy and around different parts of the globe. Yeah, so
So the idea that there was a kind of a chosen race or a chosen people, I suppose, has been taken and misused and subverted and abused to the point where it's being used as a almost a platform for genocide and some evils like that. But the idea that there was a people, shall we say, pre-Christian, and that they were, say, the Coptic Church or the Church of Ethiopia or the Church of Egypt around that area, sort of northeast Africa going into the Middle East as well, is a sort of fairly well researched theory, you know, and this idea that there was a people and they migrated. Yeah, absolutely. I love all that stuff. I think it's fascinating. I read about there was a people called the Cathars.
I have so memories of a cathar. Yeah,
So if you take the lineage, shall we say, energetically from Atlantis, the survivors of Atlantis, which I'm sure is there's some connection there as well.
mm,
And the survivors of Atlantis recamped in ancient Egypt. And then after maybe 8,000 years or so of dynasties in Egypt, you come to what we're talking about, which is your Essenes and then your Coptic Christians, the knowledge of which has been shrouded in mystery by the modern incarnation of the Holy Roman Catholic Empire and the Pope and Christianity as it manifests today.
mm,
But the people, the Cathars, they spread into the northeast of Spain and the southeast of France. And I'd love to go to these places like the Languedoc just to see if there's any of the architecture and archaeology left from those times. But they were a people persecuted by the church for their
yeah,
beliefs because they wouldn't accept the new, shall we say, indoctrinated beliefs that were being imposed on the people through the idea that you could buy, passage into heaven from the Pope if you had a few bob. And
which is
this was
crazy. Yeah,
again around the 14th, the 15th, and the 16th century, and this led into very dark times. But unfortunately, the Cathar people were eventually sort of rounded up and destroyed and eliminated. But the spirit of what they were about lives on in much the same
yeah,
way of the indigenous people of the Americas. Whilst the sort of European man came over with guns and diseases and, shall we say, not a very harmonious attitude or approach, and facilitated in the sort of genocide of these people that lived in harmony with the land, that spirit of what they stood for never really went away or died. It's still there.
yeah. And I've been to parts of the Le Pays Cathar, which is Cathar country, Languedoc area, Carcassonne, Toulouse, all those areas, and you
The
can feel
Narbonne.
that energy in the land there. There's definitely an energetic signature left, but they were persecuted because they understood the nature of reality, the true power of our divinity, and of course that wouldn't suit an agenda that would perhaps seek to control and dominate people and
Yeah.
limit people's capacity to be divine expressions in this world. So there's definitely an energetic signature left from them. And it's a place that I have, huge connection to on a soul level. So it's definitely well worth going to see. And there is parts of the castles and the rooms left. The Cathars had a lot of castles on top of mountains and mounds. So there's still a lot of that there. So it's definitely a place worth exploring if it's something you're interested in. Yeah.
It sounds like a camper van thing where you can,
Yeah. It'd be
yeah.
quite amazing. Few dodgy kind of upward spiral roads to some of those castles, but yeah, definitely worth exploring. Yeah.
That leads me
Yeah.
nicely into my next question, which is what has been your best trip abroad and why?
Um, I think probably, I mean, there's many places that I've gone to. But most recently, I think probably my favorite place has been California, which kind of surprised me, because I'm not really into the whole American culture. But when I landed in California, and I remember I went there for the first time last year, and when I landed, I was waiting for my friend to pick me up, and I was in LA airport. Absolute bonkers, cars everywhere, crazy, crazy, crazy. But there was just something in the energy of the land there that I really connected to. And I remember thinking, wow. There's something really special about this place, about the
Hmm.
energy in the land here. And one of my soul gifts is to be able to tune into land and to, tune into the earth grids and stuff. And anytime I've gone to California, it's a beautiful place. And, I've mainly gone to places like Santa Monica, Malibu, Thousand Oaks, San Diego. So not all of California. But it's like as if the land activates me and I get very crystal clear guidance and understanding about different things happening in my life. And every time I go, there's like a transformation. So I went 4 times last year. So I think that would be my favorite place that I've gone to for that reason, because it's
Mhm.
just really helped to open up and activate something within me personally. And it's a fascinating place. I was there last year for the elections, which is an interesting time to be in America. And I was also there for the inauguration, another interesting time to be in America because the energies there are very interesting. And I think America, for me, and we can debate all day about various different presidents and whatever. But for me, I think America, regardless of your perception, is leading the timeline in terms of the great changes that are going to come. And there's going to be a lot of different things dismantling there and a lot of stuff birthing in. That's going to be very interesting over the next few years. So I definitely think for me, that's been my favorite place. But I also loved Canada. I was in Canada, West Coast Canada, and that's a beautiful, pristine nature,
Mhm.
pure waters, just gorgeous place as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
California is massive, right?
Oh, it's massive, yeah. So I only went to like LA and Thousand Oaks and Santa Monica, but where I stayed was very close to Santa Monica Mountains.
Yeah.
So, because I love nature, I don't really like cities. So whenever I fly into a city, I normally exit straight towards the nearest, nature place. But it's very beautiful. Yeah, it's a really beautiful energy there. Yeah, but it's massive. I haven't explored most of it, but just those areas have been very personally transformative for me.
It's on the bucket list, Yvonne. I've got
Yeah.
a cousin that lives out there. Shout out to Gareth if he's watching. He's
Oh,
in what
brilliant.
they call the Bay Area.
Oh yeah,
And
San Francisco Bay Area, is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I've got Mount Shasta on the bucket list. So I've got
I'd
a
love to go
trip,
there as
an
well.
itinerary planned where we start in Boston
Wow.
and go
Yeah.
to Chicago. I've got a beautiful, amazing client that lives in Chicago I want to visit. And then down to, shall we say, Sedona, Arizona, around
Yeah. Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
then a drive up to California to Mount Shasta. And yeah, apparently it's not very practical to want to do this in a car because it could take a few months. So
Okay, it's a bit of driving. It's
yeah,
doable though. It's a bit of driving. I think it's about a
massive
10-hour
round trip.
drive, 10, 12 hour drive from LA to San Francisco. So it's doable. You could do it. You could do it.
I think yeah, there's something like we did the winter solstice at Newgrange and we did the summer solstice at Stonehenge and then we went to Egypt for the pyramids. We did a meditation
Wow.
in the Great Chamber of the Grand Pyramid or whatever.
Wow.
Grand Chamber of the Great Pyramid, shall we say. And we got Mount Shasta on the bucket list, but it's like as well as Peru, as well as Cambodia, as well as Nepal and Tibet was on the plan for September this year until I got a kidney stone.
Oh
And
gosh.
I've had to abandon plans to do 28,000 feet circumambulation of Mount Kailash. Not feeling fit enough, but it's definitely on the to-do list. And
Yeah.
it's like that desire, that heart's desire to travel and to see these places and to connect with these sites, and then to bring people here to Ireland and bring people to the sites that we've got here. We've got such amazing, beautiful sites on our doorstep that are often overlooked. And that's a real
Mm.
passion as well.
And
Yeah.
I think Ireland, for me, having traveled, I won't say all over the world, but certainly, Canada, a bit of America and Europe, and hopefully kind of over the other side of the world later, well, early next year. Ireland has a very special energy about it, and I think energetically in terms of the earth grids and the energetic kind of signature and I suppose knowledge within the land here is going to be very pivotal in the changes that are going to happen globally. And it's a huge passion of mine as well because I feel we've brought a lot of international people over in my capacity as a wellness entrepreneur, and they all feel like an activation when they land here. It's like it awakens a remembrance within people. So it definitely has a role to play. There's some really powerful energies in Ireland that can help. And even travel generally will awaken stuff in people because there's different codes in different locations. But Ireland definitely has a pivotal role to play
Yeah.
in terms of anchoring in more elevated states of existence on planet Earth. So yeah, it's great to see more and more people coming here. And a lot of spiritual leaders are drawn here as well. Because it does activate them. And there is something within the land here that can heal people and help them to remember their sovereignty. You know, the like Ireland, the Emerald Isle, for me, it holds the emerald coding, the emerald frequencies, which is all about sovereignty. It's all about understanding you're a divine being that can create your reality and you're very sovereign, you know. So Ireland helps people to remember that. And it's possibly one of the reasons why Ireland has been targeted an awful lot and
Yeah.
has, you know, when you look at the historical journey of Ireland and the oppression and, you know, the really harsh Catholic experience that we've had, and it's really tried to diminish the spirit of Ireland, but that energy is there and it's not going away and it's
Can't be
just going to get
destroyed.
stronger and
Yeah. The more they
it's
try and
there
put
to
it
be in
down,
service to people in a
the more it
wider context
remains.
around the globe as well.
I describe the Holy Roman Catholic Empire and the British Crown as the two enemies of humanity. But
Mm,
there is a wisdom here that predates both of those entities.
yeah,
And if you go back to, say, pre-Gaelic and pre-Celtic, back to the indigenous wisdom here, um, whether it was pagan or shamanic or druidic, it was pretty evident that it was a matriarchal society,
mm,
you know,
yeah,
and that the men served and protected their women. And I
yeah,
love telling the story of the band Philly. I can't remember where I read it, but there was a race of, they were female warrioresses. They were also poetesses. So they had the capacity for scholarship and poetry, but they also were renowned for their ferocity because they were never taken captured. They would fight to the death so that they were never
wow.
taken. And you can just imagine this Irish mammy spirit of
Mm.
fuck you, the Sheila and the gigs, right?
The seat and the
We
gig,
will
yeah.
not be fucking taken. There's
Mm,
no way, boy. Right?
yeah,
And that
yeah,
spirit is still there, no matter how much it's been suppressed and oppressed through the various channels and the ley lines, the places where they put the churches were obviously significant places that belong to this ancient system of knowledge where we could harness free energy, you know,
yeah. And
and
I would
tune
I
in.
would concur with a lot of that. And even if you look at some of the pushback over the last few years against various different narratives, in Ireland, it was a lot of women that were speaking out, you know, and protesting against, say, water charges or even some of the lockdown restrictions. There was a lot of women that were standing up, and that's that real Celtic goddess, fiery, you know, goddess Bridget energy that's kind of gone, no, not in my watch, you know. So it is ingrained within the energies of this land, and you cannot suppress that forever. That's starting to arise, and
Mm.
the goddess arising. I'm actually doing a retreat this year with two amazing goddesses, and it's all about the return of the paradise daughters of Eru. It's the return of the feminine. It's the return of that beautiful feminine energy that is can be soft and gentle, but it's you don't it doesn't roll over. It holds
Mm.
the line. And you know it's not on their watch type thing, a bit like what you've described there, but it can be done in a way of beauty and a way of grace and compassion, but not taking any prisoners in terms of nonsense, you know. So it's that energy is starting to arise more and more, you know, which is amazing to see.
Yeah, and I think a proper sort of wholesome energy, this balancing of what the New Age movement calls the divine sacred masculine and divine sacred feminine, you're seeing very much an attack on that, where you've got people facilitating gender transitions in children that haven't
Mm.
even begun to understand themselves yet. You know, people like parents in their 20s, I'm so pumped that my kid today got her beta blockers or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah.
The fuck is going on where a kid can literally be told that they can assign their own gender and the way that they're born is just a temporary thing that can be changed. It's almost like there's a very deliberate attempt to take people away. As I say a little bit in the book I'm after publishing just now, you've got like you've always had, say, men that were quite effeminate or sissies, and you've always had women that were quite butch or
Mm.
tomboys. And so there's actually nothing wrong with that. It's always been a part of the wider spectrum of who we are as a race, as people. And all of a sudden it's like things have been made wrong that are totally natural.
Yeah. And I think what's playing out as well, this kind of conflict between masculine and feminine, and even like feminism in some way. I think what we have to start to realize is to drop that conflict between masculine and feminine, that they're meant to be in communion together, that they both have different elements that are different yet equal, and that when they weave together, it creates a force field that's beyond anything we can possibly imagine. And there seems almost like there's a social engineering towards diminishing that potential of that weaving of the masculine and feminine energies. And it's something that's starting to arise more and more. And you're starting to see, relationships and that are based not on conflict, but on co-creation and coming together in communion. That's a potent energy field. When you have two sovereign beings come together with two separate energy fields that are really heart conscious and really anchoring in, and they come together in a union or in a co-creative, collaborative way, whether it's romantically or otherwise, it creates a third force field that absolutely transformed everything around it. That
I
you don't
love
even
this
have to
idea.
speak. There's an
So
energy that's
one
there.
plus one equals three, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
revolutionary almost because people say you're nuts because one plus one equals two. But
Yeah.
if I've got you and I've got me and we come together, that third thing is a third thing. So you've got
Yeah.
one and two,
So,
and then the
a
two
third one.
together is a third. So one plus one equals three.
Yeah. And that's, a lot of symbology is related around the Trinity and the Holy Trinity, but a lot of this kind of stuff has been distorted,
Yeah.
and the message within it has been distorted. But I'm starting to understand more. And look, every day is a school day, so I don't have it all figured out. But one thing I always say to myself is I give myself permission to change my mind
Yeah.
about things and not lock into a specific belief. But I'm really starting to understand the potency of that masculine feminine energy merging and creating this field that can be absolutely transformative. And no bells and whistles necessary, just pure presence and anchorage of that energy. And when we start to drop that conflict between the masculine and the feminine, which has been engineered for aeons and aeons and aeons, we start to drop that and back into unity consciousness and honoring and revering each individual component as sovereign expressions, but then creating that third element, the world is going to transform pretty quickly when that starts to really come online and anchor in. Yeah.
So multi B, very well spoken. Thank you. Yeah. What's interesting is the I can understand feminism as a backlash to the sort of patriarchy, but it's almost been taken to a level where it can actually impair or impact a woman's natural sort of ability to be a woman. So you've almost got this kind of engendering or fostering of young women into a way of being that maybe only two or three generations ago, so the grandmother or the great grandmother, they'd be scratching their head looking at their granddaughter, go, what are you doing? It's almost as if you're seeing the rate and the pace of change.
Yeah.
And I saw this very clearly when the Thai women came to Sunyata and they were clucking and clacking away in the kitchen, proud to serve. And I spoke to them and I said, like, you know, how comes you're so happy doing the cooking and doing the cleaning? And they're like, well, we absolutely love to do this because we serve the men, and we love to serve the men because they're good men. They're men that are worthy of our service and they respect us and they love us. So we love to do this. And I was thinking, wow, imagine how many Western women could see this at play or this energy in action, where it is sort of beyond dualism. It's going beyond masculine and feminism and actually, like you say, coming to a place of unification.
Yeah, and that's, as I said, that's really where we need to start to bring ourselves into. And even like feminism has an energy of conflict off it, and we need to move away from this energy of conflict. And, men and women are different in their expressions, in the qualities that they bring, in the characteristics that they bring, And I know I sound like a bit of a traditionalist, but, I'm just looking at it from a purely energetic point of view and that kind of merging of the two energies together. But feminism has an energy of conflict, and we need to move
Right.
away from that. It's not like I'm a woman, I'm better than a man, or I'm a man, I'm better than a woman. It's about acknowledging and revering aspects of each other and then working together and dropping the conflict. You don't need to be in conflict. We need to be in community together and
So
create beauty together.
wholesome masculine energy is about leadership and
Yeah,
protection and security and stability. And, when that's met with wholesome feminine energy, which is symbolized by care and warmth and nurturing. And if you give a woman something, she'll give it back to you tenfold. If you give a woman something to create and to love and to nurture, she'll show you through the capacities. And it's like when you see the harmonious relationship of the masculine and feminine energies, it's a real threat to the New World Order or the Bilderbergers or the fucking whatever it is that's, trying to destabilize and undermine humanity.
yeah. I think that's by design because they understand the potency of that. So it is by design to some extent. I mean, if you can go down a few rabbit holes, but fundamental energetics of it is it's causing that divisiveness.
Yeah.
And even if
Even
you
the
look at
family
everything,
system,
if you look at everything across all the systems, it's all designed to pivot different people against each other. But if
community
people,
values, family
yeah,
values,
yeah,
anything that's wholesome and innocent is
yeah,
almost a target. So men have been under attack for a while now,
yeah,
and a lot of men, especially in the Western world, I suppose, in the Western cultures, a lot of men are now being seen as redundant in or unnecessary, maybe by women, maybe by feminists. And in England, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, there was a kind of a movement to close down, shipbuilding and coal mines and steel works, and all of the manufacturing was outsourced to other places around the world. And instead, you had a customer service center. Now, no disrespect to anyone that wants to work in a customer service center, but you're not really going to explore your masculinity answering the phone to someone complaining about something. So, it is fascinating to see how this very slow trickle or drip, drip, drip of the erosion of these values has affected genuine, wholesome masculinity and femininity and that divine union and that sacred sort of coming together. But we almost have to see it play out, don't we?
yeah. And I think, when you look at it on a macro level, it can almost seem overwhelming. It's like, how do we sort this out? But we have to drill it back to our own individual experience and how each of us move in the world ourselves. So some of us may have been raised by toxic masculinity or toxic femininity and those old programs, and but it's up to us to develop enough self-mastery to go beyond this programming and start to actually, instead of projecting all of our limiting beliefs and programs into worlds, that we actually start to come back to our center and anchor in the and I love the way you mentioned innocence and purity. Because that and authenticity of who we are, because that is an energy and a frequency that is transformative. So when we start to take on board our own self-mastery and our own journey, then we can start to impact the world vibrationally and start to invite other people around us to do the same. So it's ultimately about the inner revolution of each of us. So I think it's very interesting times, and we're going to see a lot more people coming into that energy. And the more people that do it, it's a bit like the 100 monkey syndrome, you know?
Yeah.
So it's exciting times to be alive, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
A lot of the clients that I work with around the world, this issue of authenticity comes up again and again and again. And your man, Gabor Mate, speaks to this in the context of authenticity versus approval. And as a man who grew up ingrained or conditioned with this need for approval, I had to unlearn that along with the unlearning of lack of self-love in order to become authentic and say, well, I'm not going to go around deliberately pissing people off. I don't need to be a cantankerous grump. But at the same time, if I lose that need for approval from, sorry, I've got a couple of flies mating around my head for some reason. If you see me just
The
waving my
merging of the
arms around.
masculine, feminine, I love
Now you said it, yeah. And it's like as a guy, it's phenomenally important to let go of this need or care for what others think and
it.
just step into your own energetic vibration of being authentically you and saying, it's not that I don't care, I'm not careless, but I'm not getting caught up in you or your shit or your drama if it detracts me from being my authentic self.
Yeah,
So I can deal with you, I can work with you, I can support you, but you're not going to derail me being myself or this idea of what my authentic self is. And this comes up time and time again with all the authors I work with, this personal identity and authenticity, because you cannot but look at your shit and see exactly where your personality is the sum of your control dramas, your defense mechanisms, your survival mechanisms, and all the things we had to adapt in our younger years and teenage years just to survive, just to feel seen and heard and loved. So once you start going into adulthood, you can go, oh, right, I don't need that anymore.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the authenticity is almost like if you can imagine a sculpture and you're shaping and chopping and you're removing the things that you're not.
Yeah,
And what's left is you.
yeah,
So it's not an accumulation of things, it's actually a refining of things.
yeah. And I think a lot of people are so it's about a lack of connection to who they are inside that a lot of the lack of authentic expression in the world is people are so disconnected because they're distracted and there's different things going on. But when you start to connect in, you start to realize who you really are. Because a lot of people don't know who they really are.
Right?
Sometimes I say to people, what brings you joy? Because that's always a good marker of, what your soul
Apart
is
from
here to
chocolate and
do.
crystals.
Chocolate and crystals, yeah. But but most people, well, not most people, but a significant amount of people don't actually know what brings them joy because they're so disconnected from the authenticity of who they are.
Yeah.
So that self-mastery piece is learning about who you are and what you're about and connecting to that part of yourself. And authenticity, they say, is a frequency that's a more expansive frequency than the frequency of love. Some of these scientists that measure things. And authenticity is about the truth of who you are. So when you're being authentic, your energy field is impacting people around you. And that's why sometimes you might trigger people.
Oh
But the
God.
greatest freedom,
I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. I am the
but
greatest
it's
triggerer.
okay.
I
It's
don't know
okay to
how or
trigger
why,
people.
but I seem to trigger people at
Yeah,
will. It's like people just even, I might not even say anything, but they just get
yeah.
triggered by it.
Your
I don't know
energy.
if it's just
Yeah.
being unapologetically authentic or what, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But there's a great freedom in realizing that people's perception of you is none of your business. There's a
yeah,
great freedom in not actually worrying too much about what people think of you.
yeah. So I'm conscious that we're going to run out of time. I've
Okay.
got
Oh,
one more
yes.
question for you before
Oh,
we wrap
yeah.
up.
Go for it.
And that's
Yeah.
just the glitch in the matrix story. Have you had anything happen to you or have you had anything, shall we say, what allowed you to question your idea of reality, whether as a child or as a woman growing up, or at any time in your life, really, where you realized that not everything was as it seemed, shall we say?
Um, I think I was nearly born that way. I think there's always part of me that had an understanding of, I remember as a child kind of listening to people saying to me, oh, I'm fine, or, this is the story of what's happening. And I remember having an understanding of going, yeah, you're telling me that this is the story, but the energetics of what I'm picking up is very different. So I think I always had that kind of understanding of the world is not as it seems. But I mean, I've definitely had lots of events that have been trigger points for me to move into different things, whether that be, abuse that I've suffered or traumatic relationships or, different things. But I think I think I was nearly come in that way saying, hang on, this world is a bit mad because people are saying this is happening and yet energetically I'm not picking that up. The energy I'm picking up is different. So I
Yeah.
think I've always kind of questioned on some level what's happening. And that's why I've always had that sense of curiosity of getting to behind the layers of what's on the surface and understanding more about the background.
So where did you grow up? You mentioned Dublin. What part?
I grew up in a place called Tallaght, which a lot of people know. It's quite well known. It's quite
California.
a
Sounds
working
like
class area.
California. Yeah.
What's that?
California.
California. That's it.
Sounds
Yeah.
like
No wonder I love
California.
California.
Now it all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
grew up in Dublin, quite a working class area of Dublin, from a very humble family,
Yeah.
a very hardworking family.
Yeah.
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 And you didn't end up too far from Tallaght if you're in West Wicklow anyway.
Yeah. It's only like my parents live about half an hour from where I'm currently residing. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I noticed I missed one question from earlier. Have you ever cheated death?
Have I ever cheated death? Well, I haven't had any near-death experiences, so I suppose no. But there's times when I did want to check out and go, beam me up. I've had enough of this. But I haven't actually had any major accidents or anything.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So how can people find you if people are interested to connect with you or find out more about what you do?
Probably the handiest way would be maybe through Instagram. So at Yvonne Skelly Healing, or my wellness company at Lakeshore Wellness Centre. And the website's the same as well. And my dog concurs as well. She thinks it's a great idea. But lakeshorewellnesscentre.com
Yeah.
is the website. And that kind of lists all the different events that we have. And so that's a good place to find me.
Cool. So we'll put all that into the blurb underneath in the YouTube video and stuff.
Mhm.
All that remains is for me to thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, lovely to hear more about you and looking forward to meeting you later on this month.
Yes, and I'm delighted. And thank you for inviting me on. And I'm really looking forward to your book launch.
Yeah,
And I would like to get your book actually because I think I do want to write a book, so I think it would be very useful to me. So I really appreciate the invite to your book launch and to your podcast.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And my
and
dog is
God
saying
bless
goodbye
you.
as well. So thank you.
The Menscape
The
Podcast.
Menscape Podcast with Carl.J.
Podcast. Ashley. Ashley.